The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty Afghan village of Khost as Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison adjusted his tactical gear one final time. The SEAL Team 6 unit had been operating in this remote region for 3 weeks, conducting intelligence-gathering missions along the Pakistan border. Morrison, a decorated veteran with 12 years of special operations experience, had seen enough combat zones to know when something felt different about a place. The team consisted of 8 elite operators, each handpicked for their specialized skills. There was Chief Petty Officer Marcus "Tank" Rodriguez, the team's heavy weapons specialist whose imposing frame and steady nerves had earned him respect in countless firefights. Petty Officer First Class David Chun served as their communications expert, his ability to maintain contact with command under the most challenging conditions proving invaluable time and again. Hospital Corpsman Second Class Alex Thompson carried the medical responsibilities, his quick thinking and skilled hands having saved more lives than any of them could count. The remaining team members included Petty Officer Second Class Tommy "Hawk" Williams, their designated marksman whose precision with a rifle was legendary throughout the SEAL community. Petty Officer James "Ghost" Patterson handled demolitions and breaching operations, his quiet demeanor hiding an encyclopedic knowledge of explosives. Petty Officer Rick "Bulldog" Murphy served as the team's close-quarters combat specialist, while Petty Officer Sam "Eagle" Martinez rounded out the unit as their intelligence analyst and Arabic language expert. Their current mission had brought them to this particular village following intelligence reports of a high-value target potentially moving through the area. The target, known by the codename Scorpion, was believed to be a key facilitator in the regional insurgent network, responsible for coordinating attacks against coalition forces and Afghan government installations. Morrison gathered his team around a makeshift table constructed from wooden crates in their temporary command post, an abandoned mud brick building on the village outskirts. The structure provided adequate concealment while offering multiple escape routes should the situation deteriorate rapidly. Maps covered the surface, marked with red circles indicating known insurgent positions and blue triangles showing friendly force locations. Intelligence suggests our target will attempt to cross through this sector sometime within the next 72 hours, Morrison explained, pointing to a narrow valley pass marked on the topographical map. Local sources indicate he's traveling with a small security detail, probably no more than 4 or 5 individuals. Tank leaned forward, studying the terrain features carefully. What's our rules of engagement looking like, sir? Are we capturing or eliminating? Preferably alive for interrogation purposes, but we're authorized to use lethal force if the situation demands it, Morrison replied. Command wants whatever intelligence this guy might be carrying, particularly regarding upcoming operations against our forces in the region. Chun adjusted his radio equipment, ensuring all frequencies remained clear. Communications with base camp are solid, but we should expect some interference once we move deeper into the valley. The terrain is going to play hell with our satellite uplink. Thompson checked his medical supplies methodically, a habit ingrained through years of combat deployments. I've got enough supplies for major trauma care, but if we take heavy casualties, extraction is going to be critical. The team spent the remainder of the morning conducting final equipment checks and reviewing contingency plans. Each operator verified his weapon systems, communications gear, and specialized equipment. They had learned through hard experience that attention to detail during preparation often meant the difference between mission success and catastrophe. As afternoon approached, Morrison received word from their forward observation post that several villagers had been spotted moving through the area in an unusual pattern. Hawk, positioned on a ridge line overlooking the village approaches, reported through his radio that the movement appeared deliberate rather than random. I've got eyes on approximately 15 to 20 individuals moving in small groups toward the eastern edge of the village. Hawk's voice crackled through their communications system. Most appear to be women and children, but there are definitely some military-aged males mixed in. Morrison considered this information carefully. Civilian movement in conflict zones often indicated either impending danger or opportunities for intelligence gathering. Local populations frequently possessed knowledge about insurgent activities, though extracting such information required careful handling to avoid alienating potential sources. Ghost, Take Patterson and Martinez to establish an overwatch position on the southern approach, Morrison ordered. I want early warning if our target or any hostile forces attempt to enter the area from that direction. The afternoon hours passed slowly as the team maintained their surveillance positions. The village below appeared normal on the surface, with children playing in dusty streets while adults went about their daily routines. However, experienced operators like Morrison had learned to recognize subtle signs that often preceded significant events. Women gathering water from the village seemed more hurried than usual. Men congregated in small groups, speaking in hushed tones before dispersing quickly. Livestock appeared restless, and several families had begun moving their most valuable possessions into concealed locations. As evening approached, Thompson noticed an unusual sight through his binoculars. A woman, appearing to be in her mid-30s, was walking slowly along the main road leading into the village. What caught his attention was not her presence itself, but rather her condition and behavior. The woman moved with obvious difficulty, favoring her left leg while supporting her right arm against her body. Dark stains on her traditional clothing suggested recent bleeding, though from this distance it was impossible to determine the extent or nature of her injuries. More significantly, she maintained complete silence despite her apparent pain, not calling out for help or showing signs of distress that might be expected from someone in her condition. "Boss, you need to see this," Thompson called softly to Morrison. "We've got a wounded female approaching from the northwest, but something's not right about the whole situation." Morrison moved to Thompson's position and accepted the binoculars. Through the magnified view, he could clearly observe the woman's labored progress. Her injuries appeared genuine, but her behavior struck him as inconsistent with someone seeking medical assistance or fleeing from danger. The woman's eyes constantly scanned her surroundings with a level of tactical awareness that seemed unusual for a typical civilian. She moved with purpose despite her injuries, following a specific route rather than taking the most direct path to the village center. Most tellingly, she made no attempt to attract attention or seek help from other villagers she encountered along the way. "Chun, are you picking up any unusual communications traffic in the area?" Morrison asked. "Negative, sir. Radio traffic has been minimal all day, nothing that stands out as significant." Martinez, monitoring the situation through his own observation equipment, added his assessment. "Her movement patterns suggest familiarity with the terrain and possibly some level of tactical training. She's avoiding open areas and using available cover more effectively than you'd expect from a typical civilian." The team continued observing as the woman made her way closer to the village outskirts. Her pace remained steady despite obvious pain, and she periodically paused to survey the area around her before continuing. These pauses appeared deliberate rather than simply rest breaks, as if she was checking for potential threats or observers. Morrison felt the familiar tension that preceded significant events during combat operations. Years of experience had taught him to trust his instincts when something felt wrong about a situation, even when he couldn't immediately identify the specific threat. "Tank, Rodriguez, I want you to reposition to the eastern perimeter and establish fields of fire covering the main approaches," Morrison instructed. "Something about this whole scenario has me concerned." As darkness began to fall across the valley, the woman finally reached the village outskirts. Rather than seeking immediate medical attention, she moved to a specific building near the eastern edge of the settlement. The structure appeared unremarkable from external observation, but her direct approach suggested previous familiarity with the location. The SEAL team maintained their surveillance as village activity gradually decreased with the approaching night. However, instead of the normal settling into evening routines, subtle signs of preparation became apparent throughout the settlement. Lights that normally remained on were extinguished earlier than usual. Vehicles that had been parked in open areas were moved to concealed positions. Morrison realized they were potentially witnessing the preliminary stages of a significant event. The wounded woman's arrival might have served as some form of signal or trigger for whatever was about to unfold. His team's mission parameters had assumed they would be conducting surveillance and possibly capturing a single high-value target. But the developing situation suggested something far more complex. "All positions, this is Morrison," he transmitted quietly. I'm declaring weapons hold until further notice. Something bigger than our original intel suggested is developing here, and I want everyone ready for rapid escalation." The team acknowledged their commander's instructions while maintaining their observation positions. Each operator understood that their carefully planned mission was about to become something entirely different. The wounded woman who had passed through their sector might have just triggered events that would challenge everything they thought they knew about the tactical situation. In the growing darkness, Morrison couldn't shake the feeling that his team's confidence in their mission parameters and tactical superiority was about to be severely tested. The silent woman had brought with her something that would change everything about their operation in ways none of them could yet imagine. The night settled over the Afghan village like a heavy blanket, bringing with it an unsettling quiet that made Morrison's skin crawl. Through his night vision goggles, he watched the wounded woman disappear into the building she had approached with such determination. What happened next defied every tactical assumption his team had made about their current operation. Within minutes of the woman's arrival, the building began showing signs of activity that suggested far more than a simple medical emergency. Infrared signatures detected through their thermal imaging equipment revealed multiple heat sources moving within the structure, indicating the presence of several additional individuals who had apparently been waiting for her arrival. "Boss, we're seeing significant movement in that target building," Hawk reported from his elevated position. "I count at least 6 distinct heat signatures, and they're moving with purpose, not like people attending to a wounded person." Martinez, monitoring electronic communications, suddenly picked up a burst of radio traffic in what sounded like coded Pashto. "Sir, I'm intercepting communications that don't match normal civilian patterns. The frequency and encryption methods suggest military or insurgent coordination." Morrison felt the tactical situation shifting beneath his feet like sand in an hourglass. Their intelligence had indicated they were pursuing a single high-value target with minimal security. Instead, they appeared to have stumbled into something far larger and more complex. The building where the woman had taken refuge sat strategically positioned to observe multiple approach routes into the village. From that location, occupants could monitor the main road, the mountain passes to the north, and the valley floor that served as the primary transit corridor for the region. Morrison began to suspect they were looking at a sophisticated observation post rather than a random shelter. "Chun, give me a priority communication with base command," Morrison ordered quietly. "I need to report a significant change in our tactical assessment." While Chun worked to establish secure communications with their headquarters, Ghost reported unusual activity from his southern observation position. Movement detected along the ridgeline approximately 800 meters south of the village. Multiple individuals moving in tactical formation, definitely not civilians. Thompson, scanning the area with his medical training mindset, made an observation that sent chills down Morrison's spine. "Sir, I've been thinking about that woman's injuries. The pattern and severity don't match what you'd expect from an accident or random violence. Those wounds look deliberately inflicted, almost like torture marks." The implications of Thompson's assessment hit Morrison like a physical blow. If the woman had been tortured, her sudden appearance in this specific location took on an entirely different meaning. She might not be seeking refuge at all, but rather delivering intelligence obtained through brutal interrogation. Martinez suddenly looked up from his monitoring equipment with alarm. "Commander, I'm picking up radio chatter suggesting coordinated movement from multiple directions. At least 3 separate groups are reporting positions around the village perimeter." Morrison's mind raced through tactical possibilities. If enemy forces were positioning themselves around the village, his 8-man team could quickly find themselves outnumbered and surrounded. Their extraction routes could be compromised, and their communication with base command might be cut off at any moment. "All positions, implement immediate dispersal protocol," Morrison commanded. "We're potentially looking at a coordinated ambush scenario. Move to alternate positions and prepare for extended engagement." The SEAL team began executing their contingency plans with the precision that came from countless hours of training. Each operator moved to predetermined alternate positions that provided better defensive coverage while maintaining observation capabilities. Their confidence in a straightforward surveillance mission had evaporated completely. From his new position, Tank observed something that confirmed Morrison's worst fears. Sir, vehicles approaching from the eastern road. I count 3 trucks, moving without lights, but definitely heading this way. The vehicles Tank had spotted appeared to be civilian trucks, but their movement pattern and timing suggested military coordination. They approached the village using terrain features for concealment, stopping periodically as if checking for hostile observation before continuing their advance. Chen finally established contact with base command, but the news he received offered little comfort. Sir, headquarters reports they're tracking unusual communications traffic throughout this entire sector. Intelligence suggests a major insurgent operation may be developing across multiple villages simultaneously. Morrison realized his team had inadvertently positioned themselves in the middle of what appeared to be a significant enemy operation. Their original mission to capture or eliminate a single high-value target had become irrelevant in the face of this larger threat. The wounded woman's role in these events remained unclear, but her timing and destination suggested she was a crucial element in whatever was unfolding. Her injuries might have been the result of interrogation designed to extract information about coalition force positions and capabilities. As the night progressed, Ghost reported additional concerning developments from his observation post. Multiple groups converging on the village from different directions. This is definitely coordinated, and we're looking at significantly more personnel than our intelligence indicated. Thompson, using advanced optics to study the building where the woman had taken refuge, noticed that infrared activity had increased substantially. The heat signatures in that target building suggest they're preparing equipment or weapons. This isn't just a meeting, they're setting up for operations. Martinez intercepted a communication burst that provided crucial intelligence about their deteriorating situation. Sir, they're talking about American observers in the area. Someone knows we're here, and they're discussing our positions. Morrison felt his team's tactical advantage evaporating rapidly. Their concealment had apparently been compromised, which meant the enemy forces converging on the village might be specifically targeting the SEAL team rather than conducting unrelated operations. Hawk, what's your assessment of our extraction routes? Morrison asked his designated marksman. Not good, sir. I'm seeing movement that suggests they're positioning to cut off our primary and secondary extraction corridors. We might be looking at a deliberate containment operation. The realization that they might be the actual targets rather than observers hit Morrison with stunning force. The wounded woman's arrival could have been a signal that Coalition Special Operations forces were present in the area, triggering a coordinated response designed to capture or eliminate his team. Chen received another communication from base command that confirmed their worst fears. Sir, headquarters reports losing contact with 2 other special operations teams operating in adjacent sectors. They're declaring this area compromised and initiating emergency protocols. Morrison understood the implications immediately. If multiple special operations teams had been compromised simultaneously, it suggested the enemy possessed detailed intelligence about coalition force deployments and capabilities. The wounded woman might have been carrying information obtained through the capture and interrogation of other American personnel. All positions, prepare for immediate extraction under fire, Morrison ordered. We're dealing with a sophisticated enemy operation that has compromised our security. Primary mission is now team survival and intelligence gathering about enemy capabilities. Tank reported that the vehicles approaching the village had stopped approximately 500 meters from the settlement and were discharging personnel. I count at least 20 individuals deploying from those trucks, all carrying military-style weapons and equipment. The tactical situation had completely reversed from their original expectations. Instead of hunting a single target, Morrison's team was now being hunted by a superior force with apparent knowledge of their positions and capabilities. Thompson noticed that activity in the target building had changed again. Sir, the heat signatures suggest they're setting up communication equipment. This location might be serving as a command post for the operation against us. The wounded woman's role became clearer as Morrison pieced together the developing situation. She had likely been used to deliver intelligence about American Special Operations presence in the region, triggering a coordinated response designed to eliminate multiple teams simultaneously. Martinez intercepted another communication that provided crucial tactical intelligence. They're coordinating final positioning for what they're calling the trap. Sir, we need to move now if we're going to have any chance of escaping this encirclement. Morrison looked around at his team members, each focused on their specific responsibilities despite the overwhelming tactical disadvantage they faced. These were elite operators who had survived countless dangerous missions, but the current situation challenged their capabilities in ways none of them had anticipated. The silent woman who had passed through their sector hours earlier had indeed triggered the collapse of their confidence in this mission. What had begun as a routine surveillance operation had become a fight for survival against an enemy that seemed to know their every move before they made it. As Morrison prepared to give the order for emergency extraction, he couldn't shake the image of the wounded woman walking silently toward the village despite her obvious pain. Her determination and tactical awareness suggested she was far more than a simple messenger or victim. She might have been the key element in a sophisticated trap that was now closing around his team with deadly precision. Morrison's hand tightened on his rifle as he made the decision that would determine whether his team lived or died. The encirclement was nearly complete, with enemy forces positioning themselves to eliminate any possibility of escape. Through his night vision equipment, he could see muzzle flashes beginning to appear along the ridgelines as the trap prepared to spring shut. Execute emergency breakout protocol, Morrison commanded through their tactical communication system. Route Charlie through the western ravine, maximum speed, leave nothing behind that compromises operational security. The SEAL team began moving with the fluid precision that separated elite operators from conventional forces. Each man understood his role in the breakout sequence, having rehearsed similar scenarios countless times during training exercises. However, training had never included the psychological pressure of knowing their enemy possessed detailed knowledge of their capabilities and standard procedures. Hawk provided covering fire from his elevated position as the team began their movement toward the predetermined extraction route. His rifle spoke with measured precision, engaging targets that threatened to compromise their withdrawal. Each shot was calculated to maintain the element of surprise while eliminating the most immediate threats to his teammates' survival. Movement compromised along primary route. Ghost reported as he detected enemy forces already positioning to intercept their withdrawal. They knew exactly where we'd try to extract. Morrison felt a cold realization settle in his stomach. The enemy's positioning wasn't reactive to their movement, but rather anticipatory. Someone had provided detailed information about SEAL standard operating procedures, including extraction protocols and emergency breakout routes. Tank engaged multiple targets advancing from the eastern approach, his heavy weapons providing the suppressive fire necessary to allow the team's movement. Sir, these guys are moving like they've fought special operations forces before. They're not making the mistakes typical insurgents usually make. The observation sent chills through Morrison's tactical assessment. Enemy forces that had experience fighting American special operations represented a completely different level of threat than typical insurgent fighters. Such experience could only come from previous encounters, suggesting other coalition teams might have been captured or eliminated. Chen struggled to maintain communication with base command as enemy jamming equipment began interfering with their radio frequencies. Sir, they're actively jamming our communications. This level of electronic warfare capability suggests significant external support. Martinez, while providing security during their movement, made an observation that explained much about their current predicament. Commander, the communication intercepts I gathered earlier indicated coordination with Pakistani intelligence services. We're not just fighting local insurgents. The implications hit Morrison like a sledgehammer. If Pakistani intelligence was involved, the enemy possessed access to American tactical doctrine, equipment specifications, and possibly even real-time intelligence about coalition operations. The wounded woman might have been delivering information obtained from Pakistani sources rather than local torture. Thompson, moving carefully to avoid detection, noticed something that confirmed their worst fears about the tactical situation. Sir, those aren't just AK-47s they're carrying. I'm seeing American-made weapons and equipment. Some of this gear looks like it came from captured coalition forces. The presence of American weapons and equipment in enemy hands suggested previous successful operations against coalition special operations teams. Morrison's unit might not be the first SEAL team to walk into this type of sophisticated trap. As they moved through the darkness toward their extraction point, Ghost detected movement that indicated the enemy's tactical sophistication. They're using bounding overwatch techniques and coordinated fire and maneuver. These guys have received professional military training. Morrison realized they were facing an enemy that combined local knowledge with professional military capabilities and access to high-level intelligence. The wounded woman's arrival had triggered a response that demonstrated planning and resources far beyond typical insurgent operations. Hawk, covering their withdrawal from his overwatch position, reported a development that chilled every member of the team. "Sir, I'm seeing individuals in the enemy force who appear to be Caucasian. These aren't all local fighters." The presence of non-Afghan personnel suggested international involvement in the operation against Morrison's team. Foreign fighters with special operations experience would possess the knowledge necessary to anticipate and counter American tactics. Chin finally re-established limited communication with base command and received information that explained the scope of the threat they faced. "Sir, Headquarters confirms that multiple coalition special operations teams have gone missing in this region over the past 6 months. Intelligence suggests a coordinated campaign to eliminate special operations capability." Morrison understood they had walked into the middle of a strategic operation designed to degrade coalition special operations effectiveness throughout the region. The wounded woman had been one element in a larger campaign that had already claimed multiple American teams. The team reached the western ravine that served as their primary extraction route, only to discover that enemy forces had anticipated this movement as well. Tank reported through their tactical network that hostile positions were already established along the ravine floor and surrounding ridgelines. "Route Charlie is compromised," Tank reported grimly. "They're positioned exactly where our doctrine says they should be to interdict this extraction route." Morrison felt the walls closing in around his team as each tactical option proved to be anticipated and countered by their opponents. The enemy's knowledge of American procedures appeared to be comprehensive and current, suggesting access to the most recent tactical doctrine and training materials. Thompson, scanning for alternative routes, noticed something that provided a glimmer of hope for their situation. "Sir, there's a drainage culvert system about 200 meters north that doesn't appear on our maps. Local construction that might not be in enemy planning." The unmapped drainage system offered the possibility of movement that enemy forces might not have anticipated. Morrison made the decision to abandon their standard extraction procedures and attempt escape through terrain that fell outside normal tactical doctrine. "All positions, we're going underground," Morrison commanded. "Follow Thompson to that drainage system and prepare for subsurface movement." As the team moved toward the drainage culvert, Martinez intercepted a communication that revealed the true scope of the operation against them. "Sir, they're calling this Operation Silent Hunter. They've been planning this specific engagement for weeks." The revelation that their mission had been anticipated and planned for explained everything about their current predicament. The wounded woman's arrival hadn't triggered a spontaneous response, but rather served as the final signal to execute a carefully prepared trap. Ghost, providing rear security as they approached the drainage system, observed that enemy forces were beginning to realize their quarry had deviated from expected escape routes. "They're showing confusion in their movement patterns. I think we've finally done something they didn't anticipate." Thompson led the team into the drainage culvert, a concrete tunnel system that appeared to connect several buildings in the village with an irrigation network extending into the surrounding agricultural areas. The space was cramped and claustrophobic, but it offered concealment from enemy observation and thermal detection equipment. As they moved through the underground system, Chin managed to establish brief communication with base command through a different frequency that enemy jamming hadn't identified. "Sir, extraction helicopters are standing by, but they can't approach until we reach a secure landing zone." Morrison calculated their chances of reaching an extraction point while enemy forces controlled the surface terrain. Their movement through the drainage system was providing temporary concealment, but eventually they would need to emerge into areas where hostile forces maintained overwatch. Hawk, bringing up the rear of their underground movement, reported that enemy forces were beginning to search the village more systematically. They know we've gone to ground somewhere in this area. It's only a matter of time before they start checking underground spaces. The team pressed forward through the drainage system, moving toward what their maps indicated was an irrigation canal that extended several kilometers from the village. If they could reach that point, extraction might be possible under cover of darkness. Tank, leading the underground movement, suddenly stopped and signaled for silence. Through the concrete walls of the tunnel, they could hear voices speaking in multiple languages, including English with what sounded like European accents. Martinez listened carefully to the conversation above them and reported what he heard. "Sir, they're discussing search procedures for underground spaces. Someone up there has experience with tunnel warfare." Morrison realized that even their improvised escape route might not provide the advantage they desperately needed. The enemy force included personnel with knowledge of underground warfare techniques, suggesting comprehensive preparation for every possible American response. As they continued their movement through the darkness beneath the village, Morrison couldn't escape the image of the wounded woman who had triggered this entire nightmare. Her silent determination and tactical awareness had been the key to an operation that challenged everything his team thought they knew about fighting in Afghanistan. The confidence that had carried them into this mission had been shattered by a single individual whose role they had completely misunderstood. Now, moving through darkness toward an uncertain escape, Morrison wondered if they would live long enough to understand exactly who she had been and what intelligence she had carried. The drainage tunnel stretched endlessly ahead of Morrison's team as they crawled through the suffocating darkness, the concrete walls seeming to press closer with each meter of their desperate escape. Behind them, the sounds of systematic searching grew louder as enemy forces began checking every possible hiding place in the village above. Tank, leading their underground movement, suddenly held up his fist to signal a halt. Through the tunnel ahead, they could see a faint light filtering down from what appeared to be another access point. Morrison moved forward to assess the situation, knowing that any emergence from their concealment could expose them to waiting enemy forces. Peering up through the access opening, Morrison could see they had reached the edge of the village's agricultural area. Irrigation channels extended in multiple directions, offering potential routes toward their extraction point. However, the open terrain between their current position and the extraction zone would leave them exposed to enemy observation and fire. "Chun, can you raise extraction on any frequency?" Morrison whispered. Chun worked his radio equipment with practiced efficiency, cycling through multiple frequencies until he found one that wasn't being jammed. "Sir, I've got weak contact with base command. Extraction birds are holding at standby position, but they need confirmation of a secure landing zone." Morrison studied the terrain ahead through his night vision equipment. The irrigation channels provided some concealment, but crossing the open fields would require perfect timing and coordination. Enemy forces were undoubtedly positioning to intercept any movement toward known extraction points. Thompson, monitoring their rear security, reported that sounds of searching had moved closer to their tunnel entrance. "Sir, they're getting systematic about checking underground spaces. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they find this tunnel system." The time pressure forced Morrison to make a decision that would determine his team's fate. They could remain hidden in the tunnels and hope enemy forces wouldn't discover them, or attempt to reach extraction across terrain that offered minimal concealment. Both options carried significant risks. "Martinez, what intelligence do you have about enemy positioning around potential extraction zones?" Morrison asked. Martinez reviewed the communication intercepts he had gathered throughout the night. "Sir, they've positioned observation posts at all the standard landing zones within 10 kilometers. However, there's been no chatter about the irrigation canal system that extends north of here." Morrison realized their best chance lay in following the irrigation network to a point beyond enemy observation, where extraction helicopters might be able to land without coming under fire. The route would be longer and more dangerous, but it offered their only realistic hope of escape. All positions were following the irrigation system north for approximately 3 kilometers before attempting extraction, Morrison commanded. "Stay low, maintain noise discipline, and prepare for contact at any point. The team emerged from the drainage tunnel into the irrigation canal, immediately feeling exposed despite the partial concealment offered by the concrete-lined waterway. The night air felt cold after the closeness of the tunnel, and the open sky above reminded them how vulnerable they were to enemy observation. As they began moving north through the irrigation system, Ghost reported movement on the ridgelines that suggested enemy forces were expanding their search area. "Sir, they're definitely looking for us outside the village now." Multiple groups moving in search patterns. The team pressed forward through the shallow water of the irrigation canal, using the concrete walls for concealment while making the best speed possible toward their potential extraction point. Each man understood that their survival depended on reaching extraction before enemy forces could organize an effective pursuit. Hawk, providing rear security, suddenly spotted something that made his blood run cold. "Sir, they're using tracking dogs. I can see handlers with animals moving along our back trail." Morrison felt despair settle over him like a heavy blanket. Tracking dogs would follow their scent trail directly to their current position, eliminating any advantage their concealment might provide. The enemy's resources and preparation seemed to anticipate every possible escape attempt. Thompson, thinking quickly about their tactical situation, made a suggestion that offered slim hope. "Sir, if we can reach that drainage outflow about a kilometer ahead, the water flow might disrupt our scent trail enough to confuse the dogs." The team increased their pace through the irrigation canal, knowing that time was working against them. Behind them, the sounds of dogs and handlers grew gradually closer, confirming that their scent trail was being followed with deadly accuracy. Chen received another communication from base command that provided both hope and additional pressure. "Sir, extraction helicopters are moving toward our area, but they're taking fire from multiple positions. Enemy forces have significant anti-aircraft capability." Morrison realized that even if they reached a suitable extraction point, enemy forces might be able to prevent helicopter landing through concentrated anti-aircraft fire. The operation against his team had been planned to eliminate every possible escape option. As they moved through the darkness toward the drainage outflow, Tank spotted something ahead that offered unexpected hope. "Sir, there's a concrete culvert ahead that connects to a larger drainage system. If we can reach it, we might be able to break our trail completely." The larger drainage system Tank had identified appeared to connect with a different watershed that flowed toward the mountains rather than the village. Following that route might take them beyond the area where enemy forces had positioned their search teams. Martinez intercepted a communication that revealed the enemy's growing frustration with their inability to locate the SEAL team. "Sir, they're requesting additional resources and expanding the search area. Sounds like we've managed to stay ahead of their pursuit so far." The team reached the drainage outflow and immediately entered the larger culvert system that Tank had spotted. The concrete tunnel was significantly bigger than their previous route, allowing them to move faster while maintaining concealment from surface observation. As they progressed through the new tunnel system, Thompson made an observation that provided crucial intelligence about their enemy's capabilities. "Sir, the construction of this drainage system suggests it was built recently, possibly as part of a larger infrastructure project. Enemy forces might not be familiar with its layout." Morrison felt the first glimmer of real hope since the operation had begun to deteriorate. If enemy forces lacked detailed knowledge of the drainage infrastructure, his team might finally have found an advantage in their desperate escape attempt. Ghost, monitoring their rear security, reported that the sounds of pursuit had become more distant. "Sir, I think the water flow disrupted our scent trail enough to slow down those tracking dogs." The team pressed forward through the tunnel system, following the concrete pathway as it gradually climbed toward higher ground. Morrison checked his GPS and realized they were moving beyond the area where enemy forces had established their observation posts. Chen managed to establish stronger communication with base command as they moved away from enemy jamming equipment. "Sir, extraction helicopters are repositioning to a new landing zone based on our current movement. They should be able to reach us if we can get to the surface in the next 20 minutes. Morrison felt cautious optimism building as they approached what appeared to be an exit point near a mountain slope several kilometers from the village. The drainage system had carried them beyond the immediate search area, offering the possibility of extraction without direct confrontation with enemy forces. As they emerged from the tunnel system into a small valley surrounded by rocky ridges, Morrison took a moment to assess their situation. They had managed to escape the immediate trap, but the wounded woman's intelligence had revealed the presence of coalition special operations in the region, triggering a broader campaign against American forces. Tank, scanning the area for threats, spotted the incoming extraction helicopters in the distance. "Sir, birds are inbound, but we need to secure this landing zone quickly." The team moved into defensive positions around the small clearing where the helicopters could land. Each operator understood that their escape was not complete until they were actually aboard the aircraft and away from enemy territory. Thompson, reflecting on the events that had brought them to this desperate escape, made an observation that would haunt Morrison for years. "Sir, that woman we saw entering the village knew exactly what she was doing. Her injuries, her timing, her destination, everything was calculated to trigger this operation against us." As the extraction helicopters approached their position, Morrison realized that the wounded woman had been far more than a simple messenger or torture victim. She had been a sophisticated intelligence operative whose apparent vulnerability had been carefully designed to mask her true purpose. The helicopter landed in the small clearing, and Morrison's team quickly boarded the aircraft. As they lifted off and flew away from the valley where their mission had nearly cost them their lives, Morrison looked back at the village where the silent woman had delivered intelligence that changed everything. Their confidence in superior training, equipment, and tactical doctrine had been shattered by an enemy that possessed detailed knowledge of American procedures and capabilities. The wounded woman's silent passage through their area had been the key to an operation that demonstrated how vulnerable even elite forces could be when facing a sophisticated and well-prepared opponent. In the months that followed, Morrison learned that the woman had been a former Pakistani intelligence officer who had provided detailed information about American special operations tactics in exchange for safe passage to a new identity. Her injuries had been self-inflicted to enhance her cover story, and her tactical knowledge had enabled enemy forces to anticipate and counter every standard American response. The operation that began with confidence in a routine surveillance mission had ended with the sobering realization that in modern warfare, the most dangerous enemies were often those who appeared most vulnerable. The silent woman had passed them injured and bleeding, but she had carried with her the intelligence that nearly destroyed an elite SEAL team and changed how American forces operated in the region forever.